Activity is the enemy of depression. That is the mantra I live my life by today. We're rebuilding this bike and talking about mental health in a series called the Bankruptcy Bike Build. My reality for extremely long periods of time between 2010 and 2020 was the weight of depression squeezing me to death. Except I had no idea what the hell was going on. I just knew I felt terrible. And because I didn't know what was going on, I just kept laying around. Or I would lay in bed, or I would lay on the floor, and I just poured gas on the fire. And I would feel more down about everything because I couldn't do anything. This is the disclaimer where I remind you that I'm not a doctor, I'm just a guy telling my own story, and so anything I talk about in here is just my opinion and should not be used to diagnose anyone, yourself, your crazy uncle at the next family reunion, or whoever. It's getting better, but most people don't have a real understanding of what depression is. They think it's just people feeling really sad. But here are like the typical symptoms of depression, or they can be. Poor appetite or eating too much, trouble sleeping or sleeping too much, nervousness and worry, loss of interest in or withdrawing from usual activities, feelings of sadness that don't go away, irritability, restlessness, lack of energy, feelings of sadness, worthlessness or guilt, inability to think or concentrate, repeated thoughts of death or suicide, chronic pain or physical problems that don't respond to treatment, increased risk-taking behavior, including reckless driving and substance abuse. And if you have bipolar disorder, there's some atypical symptoms that happen with depression as well. Depression can lift briefly for positive news or positive events and then come back immediately. Heavy, leaden arms and legs. Fears of interpersonal rejection that interferes with relationships. And many people with bipolar will experience symptoms that are ongoing depression that ebb and flow over time. I knew it. I knew I could point to parts of my life where I knew I had experienced mania over the past 15 years of my life. It was so clear. I could tell you exactly when they were. But I didn't have a clue about depression. Once I got into therapy, my therapist and I were working through a book on bipolar, and in it, it had a comprehensive depression screening. And I think there were 95 questions that it asked, and I laughed, thinking, I'm not gonna check any of these. And to my horror, when I got done, I had checked like 7/8 of the boxes out of the 95 questions. And I was so shocked looking at the book that I pushed the book away from me. And my wife was sitting at the table with me, and she asked me what was wrong. And I told her, if what is on that page is depression, then I have been depressed for 15 years. That conversation happened 6 months after I had been diagnosed. And it was at that, there aren't too many like light switch moments in any of this. Like I said, almost everything is a fader. But at that moment, that was a light switch for me that I needed real help that I didn't realize I had needed. But it also gave me real hope that things could change. And one of the first things my therapist worked with me on after this discovery was this mantra, activity is the enemy of depression. And the mantra was effective because it really kept me moving and got me moving every day and helped me realize that movement in my day could help me manage how I felt. And so there's these things I do now almost daily to make sure that activity is the enemy of depression is a reality in my life. And the first thing I do is every night before I go to bed, I make a list of things to do for the next day. Obviously, last night, my list would have been, we're gonna work on this bike today. And the first two things on my list every day, first two, all the time, are wake up and get out of bed. And people laugh at that. But when you're in the throes of heavy depression, you do not want to get out of bed, and you do not feel like you can accomplish anything. And so making sure, wake up, as long as I didn't die in the night, I did that. I woke up, and then get out of bed, I can go to that list, I can cross the first two things off, and I can show myself you can get things done today. And it sounds simple, but when you're in the absolute throes of depression, it's really effective to get me going. The second thing I do is I never allow myself to lay in bed after 8 a.m. I have to get up and get moving, because the longer I let myself lay in bed, especially if I'm feeling depressed, the more likely it is I'm not going to get anything done for the day. And I'm going to let the depression just press on me and press on me. And if I get out of bed and I get going, at least I can start checking some things off that list, and I can get moving and I can get on with my day. The third thing in my fight with depression is that I make sure I exercise every day. Now, this used to be really easy when I was training for races and getting ready for things like that, but since my mountain bike accident and the seemingly never-ending post-concussion syndrome that I've been dealing with, it's been really tricky. And so I've had to become the king of walks and going on a lot of walks, but I still just look at it as like, I'm here to fight depression. I'm not necessarily, even in 2021 when I was starting to be able to ride bike again, it really became more about the daily fight with depression and exercising in a way that let me exercise again tomorrow, rather than doing these huge blocks of training. And so even now, as I'm able to walk every day, that's what it's really about. The fourth thing is that I make sure that I work with my hands a few days a week, for sure. Sometimes it's playing with Legos or working on a puzzle. A lot of times it's down here in the bike shop working on a bike and problem solving with that. But doing things that require my mind to work in a different way that allow me to just stay active. Now, to be clear, when I'm really fighting depression, none of these activities reset the board to zero, but they do help me get through the day, and they build on each other, and they help get me back closer to the light and that normalized level that we're all fighting to get to. And I don't tend to bottom out with depression like I used to. I'm able to navigate it a lot smoother now because of these strategies. And that's really important because it lets me stay in the fight every single day rather than experiencing these times where I have to totally remove myself from my life, whether it's work or family or whatever that I would used to just disappear from for times. These strategies help me stay in it every day, which is huge. I know there are people that are struggling with depression, and you can put the work in too. You might need other help. Like, I would be remiss to say, well, I'm doing all this, but I'm not taking meds. No, I'm taking meds. I have to be on my meds. But these tools I use every day to get me through the day when I'm feeling depressed, they are so important. But they're work, and you gotta put the work in. Starting to put in the work might seem really difficult or like a mountain to climb if you're really in a hole. And I get it, I've been there. I have been that person so depressed that I'm just stuck laying in bed watching YouTube. I did it. I watched the entire Seth Bike Hacks library in July of 2020 as I laid in bed. And the thing I would say to that person that's stuck there is to put the phone down and just get out of bed. That's your first step. For me, it was so huge to eventually do that. And there's simple things you can do to work through checking things off. Go brush your teeth. That's something you can do. Put the dishes away or wash them. Those are little tasks you can chip away at day in, day out, and get yourself working back towards the light. Eventually, I asked for help, even though I couldn't explain what was wrong. It's okay if you don't know what's wrong, or if you can't explain what's going on. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew that I wasn't okay anymore.